Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today the young Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hi, guys. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today the young Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hi, guys. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. This is Lee Jackson. I have with we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today.
Hello, everyone.
Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today the young Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hi, guys. Hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today the young Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hi, guys. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today live. Hi, hello, Internet. Yancock and Pete Gennari. I have with me today. Hello. Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today hello, Internet. Yancock and Pete Gennari. With me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. Hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. With me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. Lee Jackson. I have with me today hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. With me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. With me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. This is Lee Jackson. I have with me today Yancock and Pete Gennari. With me today Yancock. I believe we are live. Hi, hello, Internet. Hello. Lee Jackson. I have with me.
With that on load time, I don't see any reason to spend more time on optimizing the page speed. There is a little bit of leeway what you could do. So when you go to the waterfall chart and see what actually is loading on the page, there is YouTube on there. And YouTube always slows down websites, even though it's for this website, it's 200 milliseconds. So that's the scope of improvement we are talking about. There's not much that is a really low-hanging fruit that you could implement that takes the website's loading time further down. What you would want to do probably is you want to test if you can lazy load YouTube so that the YouTube video does not get loaded unless somebody clicks on it, at which time the website is already fully loaded. So that would probably shave off another few milliseconds of the loading time, and maybe that will bring the fully loaded time under 2 seconds by lazy loading YouTube.
So do you think this is a combination, of
of the size of the page? I mean, what's the actual footprint of the page? Because most websites I'm putting out there are usually 3 or 4 meg in size.
Yeah.
I noticed that that's 1.2 meg, and they also have I mean,
Big
it's an
images.
it's an image-rich site. So, how do you think they might have achieved it? I'm intrigued.
They optimized the images. One thing that you can see is they have auto-optimize as an optimization plugin installed on the website, which they use to combine all the CSS requests and all the JavaScript requests, except for jQuery. So jQuery is that main JavaScript library your website depends on. And then what really is interesting, when we just look at the images, you have 160 kilobytes worth of images compressed. So that is a really good job of optimizing the images. I mean,
it actually kind of blows my mind, mate, because I don't think I've ever got images of that size to that small.
So the biggest image that you can see
That's
here
really
is
small for that image.
Kilobytes. Let's look
And
at
it's
that.
this
So
one.
that's the main background.
I guess
that
it's
below 70 kilobytes.
It's
a
an image
trade-off that you
that's
have
not.
to make.
I'll tell you what, it's like a blurry image, and therefore that means that, and also maybe doesn't have that much darkness, so that usually helps.
Yeah.
Darker and more,
it's
more
not,
sharper
not too
images
much
are.
color variety in
Yeah,
there.
there's also that.
So
there's also
if you have images with tons of different colors, usually it's tougher to decrease the file size. Whereas, let's look at the website again. When we have this in the background, you can tell that it's blurry.
Yeah.
So I've zoomed into the website, obviously, but even when I go to 100%, you can see that it is blurry, and it's probably on a level of compression that I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with being the website owner. I think it is a little bit too optimized, but again, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, but they're kind of using it, talking from an image point of view, they're using it a little bit as a, almost as a, instead of a gradient background, and it's an atmospheric image. It doesn't really need to convey any detail in it. It's just the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I really love the feeling of peace that it gives you. I don't know if it's a dawn or a sunset, but I know I'd love to be there. And it's a long exposure on the water. So
yeah, I would agree with regards to Jan. I mean, I'm looking at this in HD, just on a 27-inch monitor, and I can see a lot of the tearing, etc., in the image. So I imagine for Jan, it's even worse on 4K.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that's not really that big a criticism, because you are right.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's a beautiful way to start a page, and speed's phenomenal.
Yeah, and one thing,
as long as it conveys all the emotions that Peter just mentioned,
and it does, absolutely.
What's the point of criticizing here?
Yeah. What's I think is interesting.
Applause, I think, for speed.
Absolutely, a round of applause. What I think is interesting, Jan, for people who are not, experts such as you in GT metrics, what I find always interesting is how, because as far as I gathered from this website, they're actually, you don't need, they're Melbourne based, they're Australian, but I think that you could get therapy from them wherever you are in the world. So I love the fact that I can test, I can decide which server region to test. But I always find it really interesting. So obviously you tested Sydney because that's where they are. But I'm wondering whether it would be interesting to see how it works somewhere else. Just because I think they're trying to, they listed their target audience as anyone, anywhere in the world who needs therapy. So it might be interesting also to show people that you can do this. And again, I know how to do this, so you can too. You don't need to be an expert like Jan, and it's a free. You just have to open a free account with GT Metrics, which is such a great tool.
Let's compare that to Dallas.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So it does make a difference.
Almost double. Yeah.
Amazing,
almost double loading time from 2.8 to 3.9.
Some good scores there.
Yeah, still really good, because I mean, this scores would be really good. So okay, so 1.6 to. We're still jealous.
Don't be jealous about scores. They don't mean anything.
They just look nice. They just look nice, all green, and it just looks so nice.
Yeah.
And clients love them. It's always a struggle to explain to a client that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. For that case, I have a screenshot of an analysis I've done like a couple of years ago where it had 97 and 98, but a 20-second loading time.
Wow.
That's insane.
Wow.
That was because of a background video being used. Yeah.
Well,
Again,
oh yeah, carry
on. Just to highlight Peter's point here, we're tested from Dallas now, and you can see that it is adding 1 second of the onload time, just because we are requesting the website from Dallas, and that's just because of the distance the sites have to travel.
Does it mean they're not using a DNS?
It does mean they're not using a CDN.
CDN, sorry, I meant CDN.
It does,
Content distribution network. I do know what it is.
It does, yes, but on the same note, I'm not sure if a content distribution network would make sense for them, depending on how much traffic they get globally. And also, usually those networks tend to slow down the websites a little bit overall. Right. So you might see an averaging out of the loading times, but they're not necessarily be faster. I think we'll see that in the second page that we're looking at. Yeah, we'll see it in the second page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there aren't any questions in the comments, I'd hand it over to Peter.
Well, I was going to say, based on something Peter said, I would love to go next, because then that hopefully will segue perfectly to Peter. So I'm going to share my screen now, so you all should be able to see my screen. And something that interested me was that, especially around things like content, vision, etc., I land on this webpage, and for me, I instantly see that this is Melbourne counseling. I know that if I'm in the Melbourne area, then I can get some psychotherapy, definitely not physiotherapy. Sorry about my faux pas earlier. But one of the things that interested me was the comment that Peter made about the owner of this website saying that they are open for anyone, anywhere who wants some help, which is great. But I would challenge that as a good idea, whether or not that's a good idea, but B, with regards to this website, it's very clear. Bayside sounds like it's a localized area within Melbourne, I presume. You've got Melbourne counseling, but also as I go through the entire website, there's all sorts of references to Melbourne. So it's very clear to me that this website is super focused on that area. So you are providing excellent service and psychotherapy to people in that industry, in that area. And I would suggest you don't muddy the waters by trying to offer it to anyone everywhere online necessarily, unless you're finding you're getting tons and tons of traffic from all over the world. And in that case, you've definitely got the wrong messaging on your website. I would suspect that actually you are able to provide a premium from the quality of the design of this site for psychotherapy in Melbourne. But what has interested me about the content is that you talk a lot about what you do throughout. These are all the services that you're offering, which are all great. And this is all informative. I can land on this site and I can see that, you're going to look after me, etc. But what seems to be lacking, and I may have misread this, but what seems to be lacking to me is who your ideal person is. And I'm finding an awful lot of content that looks like filler content for SEO. So this website initially really, really impresses me when I look at this section here. You've got a great call to action, okay, I want more information, etc. You also have a great strapline here, take back control and enjoy your life again. That's going to resonate with me. But then, and this also resonates with me as well. You've already done the hard part in deciding that you want to make changes. Great. But what you don't do is then continue with that and take people down that journey, helping them get to the decision that that's what they need. What you then start to talk about really is, all the things that you are doing, etc. And this video also is hidden away, which is kind of your explainer video. So it would be awesome, I think, could be wrong, but it would be great to get some sort of video button on here so that people can get access to your explainer, and perhaps as well help people understand who it is that you're targeting, because I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to guess from the quality of the site design that you're looking only for professionals who need psychotherapy, and yet you also cover down here couples counseling, and then further down there is an image of a child. So it's giving me lots of mixed messages. Your design says corporate, your wording says Melbourne, even though you've mentioned global, and we have tons of
I hope I'm
imagery.
right.
Okay.
We need to check. That's what I remember seeing in the form when they submitted the URL. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
So we
But even if they were just focused on Melbourne, if we then talk about the target audience, it's really not clear. So I may come across this site and think, oh, this looks super expensive and super corporate, and actually think I can't afford it because it's not really speaking to me. I don't know who the types of people are that you're helping. You've got couples. It's great they do online counseling. That feels like that's a whole separate thing that they could have landing pages for, etc., and target those people specifically. But then you've got these, very different imagery all through, which doesn't help me understand. Like I said, this filler content as well isn't great. So I clicked on a couple earlier, and it seems very. If you see here, it feels like it's an SEO hack. So I'm going to land on this. I'm not getting much value from this. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't look nice compared to the rest of the site. And then I've got to go and find the content by clicking through, and it's then going to take me to finally the useful information, which has got a lot of call to actions in, and your video. And the quality of this video as well doesn't really match the design. This looks like one of those things that have been done on, say, Fiverr or People Per Hour. So we've gone from massively amazing impression. This is clearly a company that specializes in corporate CEO psychotherapy in Melbourne, and then it drops a level, and it feels like we're getting mixed messages and just too much content because of the SEO hack. It feels like it's just an SEO hack in the end. So that would certainly be some of my feedback on this. I'll drop some more later. But this navigation with all of these elements in it feels like it segues perfectly then to you, Peter, because I feel like you're going to want to talk about that.
Yes. I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about other things. And I'm going to be echoing some of the things that
I've stopped my screen. You
say.
Should be able to take over.
I am going to share my screen now. And it's here. You see it?
I see it.
Good. So, as we were saying earlier, I agree with everything that Lee has said, but I will go into further into a couple of things. So, first of all, as I said earlier, the impression that I get when I land on this is just peace, control. I feel like I want to be there. It immediately makes me evokes an atmosphere and a feeling that makes me want to be there for sure. I really like the strapline, as Lee said, take back control and enjoy life again. And I mean, my colleagues here, my esteemed colleagues, Lee and Jan, and others who follow me will be laughing because they know exactly what I'm going to go say next. But I will surprise you. So yes, I am going to mention this centered text.
But it works.
It works. I'm surprising you. So this is a case where I actually really like it, and it wouldn't work if it wasn't centered. Yes, I'm saying something new. Amazing.
But isn't that because the image is like leading you to the text?
Absolutely.
It would make no sense to have it to the left.
It would make no sense. There are two things about this. First of all, the image, which can only allow for a centered layout. And then also see how it's a pyramid? It just works. My OCD is absolutely happy with this because there's a geometry to it so the problem with centered layouts is that it makes the eyes, it doesn't give you an anchor. Basically, it's not aligned anywhere. This is aligned, and I really like it. And I'm sure that once you go smaller, responsive, it would work as well. So I really like it. It's not shouted. It's just exactly the right tone of voice for who you're targeting. What I like less is
on mobile. Just a quick addition. On mobile, they should probably add a bit darkness to the background, like put a CSS overlay with a darker background, because the subtitle goes over the wooden way. So there's too little contrast to read the subtitle on mobile.
Good, well done. Yeah, because we said we would look at mobile as well, so that's great. So the way I usually do these things is we look at the so-called above the fold, which is what you see as you land on the page. Above the fold, if you don't know, it's a term that comes from newspaper printing, when you buy a newspaper, the part, and it's folded in two, and what you see above the fold is what people notice. So that's where the main titles go. This is the above the fold that I'm looking at, although I have a very big screen. So usually I look at that first, and then I look at what the call to action is. So in this case, one further thing that I have to say is, please, can you, and people who know me are laughing already, because I've got this jumpy button here at the bottom. Can you see it? And I can't stop it. And any animation that doesn't have a specific reason to exist and that you can't stop is a bad idea for accessibility. So you should stop it, because it's bothering someone, and you don't, I mean, you want the opposite of bothering people. And then does it work? Okay, it works now. The other day wasn't working, so great, that works. So your call to action here is book appointment or send message, which I think is a good idea. But because the first thing, book appointment, actually, the point is that will people, if someone who is at a point in their life where they need counseling, I would be very curious to see whether this converts for you or not, because usually, are they ready to book an appointment? Not necessarily. And I tell you what's really interesting with our mutual friend of everybody, Paul Lacey. We were talking. He was talking. He gave a webinar for me about this client of theirs who's a coach, and she works with women in an abusive relationship. So Paul Lacey worked out a web personalization that changed the content of the website depending on where these women visiting the site would come for, because not everybody is ready to book an appointment when they've just landed on your website. So this is something you may think about. How do you draw them in? So I'm going to click on this because it's what I always do. I always click on the call to action. So I'm going to see what happens if I click on it. And it takes me to the booking page. So again, I really love the imagery. I don't know Melbourne, unfortunately. So I don't know whether this is Melbourne. It could well be. I really, really love the imagery. It makes me feel very comfortable, and I really like it. So this is obviously this is a good tool. There's the therapists here and the item, but are they ready? I think that you do need these two here. And I mean, I love to book everything online. Once I've decided, I don't want to faff about with emails or even paying once I'm there. I want to pay straight online, basically. That's the way I work. Not everybody does that, but I do. The point is that I don't know whether people would be ready for that yet. So I'd be curious to see whether it converts, because I kind of have a feeling that you should lead people by the hand a little bit more. So let's say that I'm not ready to book the appointment. Here, this is good. First name, phone, will call you back. You're not making that compulsory. You're making just name and email compulsory, which are essential because otherwise you can't get back to them. But I think there are better ways, because still here you're asking for people to work a little bit too much. How can we help? You're making it like it's a little bit of a chore for them to explain to you what you could do for them. Sometimes we've gone into what else you could do. We've shown examples of quizzes and so on, but I'd love to have a look at other areas of the website. So maybe we won't this time. So if I like, okay, so I really need counseling, but I need to know more. I'm not ready to book an appointment yet. As I completely agree with Lee, because good UX is very often good marketing. They they do the same things, that they're on an even level, really. So I agree. You've already done the hard part. It sounds great. You did that alone. It's really great to make people feel warm and fuzzy. But then agreeing with Lee, you kind of stop there, and you should carry that on. It should be about the user. It shouldn't be about you. And I think that by doing a proper user persona exercise and possibly empathy mapping, you would really uncover who you're doing this for and how you help them. Because even though you can have more than one speciality, but you really want to make it clear who you're doing it for, and that will not exclude the others. In terms of the interface, this is getting way too small and with little contrast and a bit fuzzy for me. So this would need to be a bit bigger. Don't just think of the age of your users, because even if they're young, they might still have a problem reading this. Also, the contrast between the background and the color of typeface is it's borderline. It's fine when it's bigger, but not enough when the type goes this small. The bold reads great. That's absolutely great. So again, here
on that as well, I'm on a HD monitor, so not 4K, and it's quite. It's a large 27-inch monitor, and it's quite fuzzy to read.
It's the same with me, yeah.
Yeah, so I found it quite difficult, and I've got my specs on.
Yeah, and this typeface is a lovely typeface. I really like it. Yeah, I really like it. But it's you shouldn't use this is like probably 100 weights. You should use 300 to 400. Even though it looks classier at 100, you want for people to read it. And then about the video, which you probably would want to be more prominent, but I agree with Lee in the fact that the branding doesn't correspond. So I know that doing videos is really hard work, but you've got a lovely new logo up here. See, that goes with a beautiful typography that gives you that corporate feel, that feel that this is a quality operation, definitely. And then you go here and it's completely different. The logo is completely different, and you're using a much clunkier and sort of more wooden and not as classy typeface. So, and actually you've got this logo looks even slightly different from the one below here. So I know that that's why rebranding sometimes is so hard, because there are so many outputs that you need to think about. So I think that's really important. And here it goes even smaller. I can hardly read this. And because you're dealing with people that are going through a hard phase, because otherwise they probably wouldn't be looking for counseling, you wanted to make it as easy as possible for them. And hopefully, even though the content is important, but there's no clear journey for them, I just keep scrolling down because there's nothing else for me to do, basically. And again here, this is all interesting, but there's nothing interactive. There's nothing really for me to do here. And again, I'm really wondering also, you could make these numbers oh yeah, it is actually, sorry, I take
it's in the header as well.
Yeah, good. So that's really good. So do have the number. That's absolutely something that you want. But for instance, I'm not a caller type. I don't call. I mean, it has to be like, my cat has to be really ill for me to call anyone. And I probably wouldn't, I don't know if I would email. I would just say something like, yeah, can you please help? I wouldn't, because you're asking me to do work. That's why I think that there are ways of building up forms and kind of questionnaires, which is what you want. Because the ideal thing would be for you to have a questionnaire here that leads people where they want to be, but it gives you information as well on your user. So you know already who you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with someone who's a couple, or they need group therapy, which is, I don't know, it's a bit vague, isn't it? Because you would want to know what group therapy you can.
Could be corporate group or anything, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could be anything. And
especially
then
with the brand, that's what I find confusing.
And also what I find confusing is also the conditions. I understand, so the services and the conditions, so they're different sections really. So I guess that let's say that I have, so also be careful with being too technical, because agoraphobia, claustrophobia, these, do people know? Are you sure? I know, but I'm Italian, I did ancient Greek. Emetophobia, for instance, would people know?
But don't you feel this is overwhelming? Even if this content
is
to
too much.
It doesn't need to be in that navigation menu.
I completely agree.
It can be elsewhere. It can be subcategories somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right now, you want to give. I remember you've said so many times on these, haven't you, that don't make people work for it and don't overwhelm people and don't clutter. That menu could be like home, services, and contact, and then everything else could be buried elsewhere. Because if it has to be there for SEO, etc., because it's just too much.
Yeah, agreed. And then also, if the videos are good, make more of them. If they're not, reshoot them, because I think they're hurting your brand a little bit. I agree with Lee's analysis. And then here, the copy is way too small, and you never want to have the copy across the whole width of the not the page. Even if it's the center section, it's way too long, especially because the type is so small. Have it on 2 columns, and then maybe if the video isn't that great, then use the 2 columns and then have the video on the right. But because otherwise what it looks like, and I think it probably is like that you built the homepage and you thought more about the homepage, but then when it gets to the other pages, they're not really designed. You just have a theme that gives you these lovely big headers with a centered heading. And as long as they remain like that, that's fine. But otherwise, when it goes a bit too much all over the place, that's not that doesn't work. But so if you look at the bit below the big hero image, there is no layout. It's not. There's nothing that guides me or that organizes the content. So if you have, I mean, this is quite a bit of content. And why choose Bayside is probably you may want to have a page for that. Because it says here, this is what I'm interested in. As someone who is into psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and Buddhist psychotherapist, you would immediately capture me because I love meditation. So this is what I want to know. It's not so much whether, it may be interesting that if I have a phobia, you can cure it. But to me, the way you're going to help me is what interests me the most. And it's not quite here because you don't have an about page. And that's what your about page is about. The about page is how you are going to help me. That's what it's about.
Well, what I'll do then is if I can take over the screen share, that would be phenomenal.
Of course.
Thank you very much. We are a well-oiled machine. So let's do the recap very quickly before we move on to our second site. So we've just covered this. We've given a massive round of applause for Speed. A really, really good job. Well done. With regards to Peach's feedback, we love the centered because it works so well with the image, etc. What she has, though, suggested is things like book an appointment. Is that actually the best call to action? What can you do? She's also reminded us that we don't want to make people work for providing the content. She's also highlighted the clash in brands where you've got two completely different logos, you've got different color schemes, and then the video quality completely clashes with the corporate quality that you are exuding. I also mentioned that you have this feeling of a corporate platform that would work with maybe businesses and founders and CEOs, etc. And yet we have complete mixed messaging. We don't understand who your target audience is necessarily. And then also we talked as well about the absolute wealth of content, which kind of feels a little bit more like an SEO. It's there for SEO reasons rather than for the benefit of the people who need to have a look at what's going on and learn why they should be using you, etc. So I'd encourage you watch this back on the replay. Thank you so much for submitting this site. There's a lot of positives and there's a few things that you could resolve to bring that round. Yes,
Lee, before we move on to the next bit, people are asking, I'm going to just do it super quickly because we need to move on to the next website, which is a smaller website. So we'll be all right, hopefully. I'm just going to have a quick look at the mobile version because people have been asking for it. And it's interesting. I don't know how I show that. Oh, yeah, well done.
Like
great.
that, yeah.
Perfect. So I was looking at it on my mobile actually. So see what happens here. I think Jan, you said it earlier. So once you go mobile, you should have it. You should make this. You should crop it so that it becomes.
Whoa, this becomes even more overwhelming.
Oh yeah, that is really quite overwhelming. Yeah. But the image then becomes the text is not readable anymore, and you don't really want that. That's really not readable. So use the sky and make this all the way down. Then actually the layout of the page works better on mobile simply because it's not really that laid out that much. So there's not a real, rhythm to the layout. You just put the information in a sequence, and therefore on mobile it works. And I find it actually more readable on mobile than I found it on the website. I think that we see it in a different. I'm looking at it on the narrow
width, isn't it, as well? That helps.
The narrow width, yeah, that helps the lines. That helps the length of the lines, and also the contrast. The lower contrast works at this size, and also, of course, the iPhone screen is super. Well,
it'll be nice and crisp as well. The font will be way more readable on a mobile, not on this render. So
yeah.
Okay, so, good call. I forgot all about mobile. We're chatting away about the design.
So there you go. So we need to move on to the next one. But yeah, I feel the mobile works better correcting the image background image. Yeah.
Well, they say a lot about mobile first, don't they? Oh, and the last thing we also talked about was obviously making sure that this content isn't necessarily just about what you do, but kind of involving the end user.
Absolutely.
And the last thing that I failed to mention was
Two user personas.
I looked over at the social media, and your social media is massively out of date with posts from 2018. And again, that's your social media post is another place for you to help us understand who your target audience is. So if it is just professionals from Melbourne, you need to be putting messaging out there to those guys. Right, let's take a look at our next website, and that is Piano Lingo. And I would just like to share something, first of all, on this, and then we'll kind of go around. Maybe we could then go on to Jan after me. But I've had a look through this website, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it in general. I've been targeted a lot with videos on how I can learn how to play the piano, and I've ended up buying those apps because they're really, really compelling. And I honestly feel like this homepage is missing some sort of slick video showing me either the results of what somebody has been able to achieve, or how you can use the product. This sounds like I'm going to be able to learn the piano in a really effective way, but I know too little about it. We just have tons and tons of text and iconography. This could be an app. This could be a course. This could be online training. It's really, really confusing. And in the old where Peacher says, try to reduce the amount of work they have to do. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to get from this. And there are a lot of competing call to actions. I've got my login, I've got my sign up, but then further down, I've got to join today. And then further down, I've got to learn more. There's all these different call to actions. And you've also got this sign up for free and start for free, but I'm not sure what I'm starting for free at a glance. Yes, if I read all of this, I'm going to get it. But right up here at the very top of the page, I actually don't necessarily know what this is. And I'm one of those people who sits on TikTok and buys stuff because of the flipping videos. I am such a sucker. If you show me something like someone playing the piano really well, I'll buy your flipping app, and then I'll never use it.
It seems to be a membership website with WooCommerce on there. I see lots of WooCommerce scripts on the homepage that shouldn't be there.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's go on to speed, and then I'll come back because I've got a few other things to share as well on social media. But shall we jump on that? Because that's a massive mistake, a common mistake, isn't it? Where you have the scripts for every plugin on every page. Would you like to go ahead, share, and let's have a conversation about speed, and then we'll loop back round?
Sounds really good.
Oh, so I need to stop sharing.
You have to stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let me start the screen share real quick. So, first of all, in the comments, please let me know if I'm still too low on the volume.
You're just slightly Dalek-y with the crackle.
Good.
Yeah, you are Dalek-y. You're a bit crackly.
I'm not sure what's going wrong with the microphone today. I apologize for those issues. Coming to the loading speed, anyways, this is a good example of how scores not necessarily reflect the loading time, because the 3.4 seconds really isn't that bad as the scores would imply, but there's a lot of room for improvement. So 168 requests is way too much. And the reason for that is, when you go to the waterfall chart, is that there are so many scripts loaded that don't need to be there on the homepage. So, for example, there's a data table script that doesn't need to be there on the homepage because on the homepage is no data table. There are GamiPress CSS files. I'm assuming GamiPress is some plugin to gamify the membership area to develop scores or give points or whatever. That's not needed on the homepage. Then you have WooCommerce, as I've mentioned, that isn't needed on the homepage.
There's LearnDash, so there's definitely there's lessons, so it's a LearnDash.
Yeah. So use a plugin like Asset Control and just clean up what is loading on the homepage and what is not supposed to be loading on the homepage. Because if we look at it, it's a very simple page. Like, architecturally, there's not much going on other than content and an opt-in form. So there's no need for all the LearnDash or the WooCommerce and all the other good stuff. It's also built with Elementor. So Elementor also adds a little bit of clutter to those CSS files as well. But what we've seen done really well on the other page was the grouping of the resources. So we had one CSS file instead of 5,000 like we have here. And we had one JavaScript file and the jQuery file. So that is something that you want to look into. You want to control what assets load on which page. You want to control that the assets are grouped and minified. That alone will give you a huge boost in loading time. And then another thing I wanted to highlight is when we go to the very top, it takes over 1 second for your server to start sending data to the browser of the website visitor. So that's a wasted second. For the other website, it was like 100 milliseconds or something like that.
Jan,
And that.
Can I ask a question on that? Because I think there's a common question here. So some people will think that because they have a super beefy server, that should be instant. What is it that necessarily affects that load time? Can it be that there's a whole ton of like really badly written queries in your plugins and themes that are actually taking time to process before the server starts? Right, okay. Because I always wondered, because if someone says, "Hey, I'm on Cloudways," it should load in a second.
I have
we need
like
to know why.
37 gigabytes of RAM on my server.
Yeah.
So basically what happens usually is, as you said, either query gets stuck, and then what happens is the database processes keep piling up, and then at some point the database just bogs down and takes a lot of time to find the data that your website visitor is looking for. What also can happen is that the database is cluttered, because as you're building the website, you're trying various plugins, you're trying various themes. And a good example, I love the guys at WordFence, but what I don't appreciate what their plugin does is it doesn't clean up after itself when you remove it. So if you install the WordFence plugin and then decide you're going with another solution, you have 23 additional tables left in your database that do nothing but adding bloat. So that is a good practice for that is use WPDB optimize, something like that. Use a plugin like that helps speed up the database quite a bit. On Cloudways, you have really good metrics in terms of server resources, so you can check there on the Cloudways platform panel what the load on the server is and what resources might be stuck, what processes might be stuck. So that's usually my starting point when it comes to debugging these time to first byte problems.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
So much stuff.
Someone has asked as well, what was the plugin with regards to, I think they're asking the plugin with regards to blocking certain assets from loading on certain pages.
Let me show you real quick. That's
Thanks.
the up asset control WordPress probably. So that's the best way to avoid confusion, because there are a few plugins like that. What you want to do is you want to use something like either WordPress Assets Manager, or I think there's also a plugin that is named directly Asset Control. Let me search for that.
I remember one that was written by a guy like called Tony as well, or was like called Giuliano or something like that. That's one I used to use, which gave you loads of rules, on-page rules, which allowed you to disable like CSS and JS and also queries and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I'm just looking on one of my websites on another screen. I know that I have that there. And basically what these plugins do is they automatically analyze what types of scripts would be used on any page of the website. And then you can asset cleanup. That's what it's called. It's not asset control, it is asset cleanup.
That was Janice Grant who was asking that. Shout out. Hey, Janice.
Yeah. Okay, Janice. So asset cleanup page speed booster. That's the one that I find works really well. That's the one I keep using. And then for the database, I think it is called WPDB Optimize, or maybe just WP Optimize. There we go. WP Optimize. That is a really good plugin to clean up your database. And that's from the team Updraft. So that's always, when something touches the database, I make sure that I trust the authors, because that's something you don't want to mess with. But the Updraft Plus guys obviously know what they're doing with their backup plugin.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'll hand it over back to you then, I guess, Lee.
Well, I think we can then carry on then. So what I shared in this was my confusion about what it did. Obviously, I then started to understand what it was about, but it took me some time. And what was missing, I felt, was some video or imagery, a little bit of social proof, because there are no humans that I could see. I couldn't connect with it. I didn't have any video as me as a slightly lazy creative who needs video, and you're attracting creative. It did feel that was all missing. What would be wonderful if we can get some of the design feedback, because I feel like there's a crazy load of colors and fonts in here that Peacher's going to have a field day with. So Peacher, would you like to just share with us some advice for what could be improved on the design itself?
Yeah. So just like before, some of the analysis that I do is UX, which overlaps with what Lee says. And I agree that here there's nothing really for me to do. And also when you're making me work, because I need to read to learn piano. Okay, how? And then I go, okay, 150,000 students worldwide. So how do I find out about that? How, where? That's not exploited at all. If you do have that many people. Also, Pianolingo sounds like Duolingo. Those who follow me know that I often show the Duolingo website as an amazing example of user experience. So if you look at that, then you'll see that at Duolingo, which we might actually I'll just have a quick look at, because it's just so Pianolingo, Duolingo. So the difference, the experience that I would expect and what we get instead. So, not learn. Yeah, it's not letting me do that because I have used it before. So what Duolingo does, and I haven't cleared the cache first, so that's not great. But anyway, so what Duolingo does, it just gives you something to do to get started immediately. And that's what I would want here. But here, if I fill in name and email, what do I get? You're not telling me exactly what Lee says. Good user experiences, first of all, to know make people understand exactly what they're getting. Here it's sign up, but I thought I was learning for free. What am I going to get if I do this? And then you go down and there's lots of different information. Join today, join what? It's very confusing what I would get if I did give you my details. So, and learn more. So why not take someone through the experience of showing them? If you can't build a sample, if you can't have the demo on the homepage and you want to capture emails, that maybe do a video, but I wouldn't suggest that you capture emails now. You really want for people to understand what it is. And then as for the variety of fonts and layouts and so on, this is what's happening here. So, powered and featured by Roland Road, really impressive brand names that most people would know, but leverage them. Tell me how is it connected? I have no idea. So and here you do use the same typeface, but suddenly there's lots of different typeface sizes and colors as well. So that's confusing. That again is making my brain work. So I'm just gonna click on this because that's not your fault. And again, here I really would love to know what it is about, but this, I would say that here again is the information is a bit difficult to follow. Again, it's a really nice typeface. I very much like the typeface, but you're asking me to read instead of showing me. What you should do is show me, because then also these icons, they move, they do stuff, they don't really do anything. So I expect them to be interactive and actually take me somewhere, but they don't. So you should have something here showing me what happens, and don't have the icons if they don't add anything, because they really don't add anything to this experience. And then again here, you're telling me more about it, but people don't want to read. I want to see, because you're saying that you have this amazing method that will teach me how to play the piano really easily, and I'm none the wiser. So what I'm going to do, because like I said, I always do it, I am going to click on one of the calls to action. Again, it's always a different call to action. So I don't know whether if you have different calls to action, they should have a different destination, not the same one. So I'm going to click on join today. Okay, so it just takes me here to this form. Start free. So To start experiencing how Pianolingo can help you reach your musical goals, enter your name and email below. What's going to happen then? So I'm signing up. What's going to happen? I don't know what I'm going to get. Am I going to learn? Am I going to start? Am I signing up to the newsletter?
Because it really looks like a newsletter sign up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that I would learn to play anything you want, and I would bet that, let's see where learn more takes me. Ooh, this is something different.
To a new page.
Yeah, is that a new page? It is a new page because there's no menu. So the problem here is, can you see that I've got text on top of text and I can't read it? So that's not readable. So the complete a multi-course, and again, there's nothing really interactive. Just scroll down to learn more.
Well,
and
we know it's a course now.
Not working. Yeah. So this is not. So it's not an app. It's a course. It's different to me. So the scrolling thing is not working. So again, I have to read. And I still haven't seen how this works, because I'm like Lee. Give me an interactive app and I will use it. I don't care what I'm learning. Arabic, mathematics, I just do it. And I'm a sucker for online learning as well.
It's fair to say, though, this is now going into the right territory, because there is at least a screenshot. I can instantly visualize that there is a membership, and who's the program for? I can I want to learn how to play by heart. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Or something like that. So, this is at least content that's starting to resonate.
Yeah. But here is a really good example of when centered text is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And here, as you can see, especially when you have a list, if a list is supposed to give me order, it's quite good to have a list, because bullet lists really work for me in many ways, because they give me the most important stuff. But apart from the fact that you probably have a little bit too many, I'm sure there's some of these overlap probably in terms of what they mean. But if they're not aligned to the left, see how I am going all over the place. I have to go all over the place. And instead of giving me order, they give me the opposite. So I would recommend to just not center align lists. It doesn't quite work. So we've gone from... So we clicked on learn more and it took us here, then scroll down. I have to scroll. This doesn't work. Yep. So I'm learning a little bit more. If I go to join today, this is different now. Yep. Join today took me to a newsletter first, and now it actually takes me to an online course program options.
And this is why I thought it was an app at first.
Yeah, and that course is quite expensive. I mean, you would need to really guide people through the decision process.
Yes.
It's
and
not
show me why.
Proof. Who's done this and said, look, I can play Rachmaninoff's Fifth Concerto in D minor.
Absolutely. And you can tell he's tried it. And if you have 150k people who've done this, my God, leverage it. Amen. Absolutely leverage it. Also, this to me looks like a cinema ticket. So see here how this list works so much better.
That also looks like an extra upsell, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens here if I click and learn more again? And now it's a subscription.
Email subscription.
So it needs. So I think that summing up, and because I need to look at the mobile as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I was just about to ask you that.
Yes. Yes. So I would say that summing up, you need, again, I cannot stress enough how working out your user persona and doing some empathy mapping as well, which is going deeper in what your ideal user may want. That's going to give you so much more clarity on what to do on the homepage. Give a demonstration some way. If you can't, I would suggest that you give maybe free lessons. The first 2 lessons, make them free so people can have an idea, an overview of the course. If it can't be an app type thing. But again, a quiz, something that an engaging experience that gets me through it. Because am I a beginner? Is this for beginners? Is this for forced beginners? Who is this for? So do that and make it consistent. Simplify to the max and make it consistent. And think about a user journey, a real journey that you take me through. And what happens when I land? What happens when I go and check out the video? Where do I go from there? If I go somewhere else first, where do you want me to go? And so on. So now I'm going to look at mobile. All I do is just simply this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When I get rid of this.
That'll do for now.
That'll do, won't it? So I'm going up. So again, here we're on this page. We're not actually on the home page. Shall I go on the home page? So for instance, from here, if I want to go on the home page, I don't know how to do that.
I think that's supposed, though. I think this serves somewhat as a sales page, but the issue is with that page being WooCommerce based, it's a little bit tricky and requires custom layouts to make this. I assume it is the shop page, like the page that lists all products.
Which is really it's now the most interesting page, really.
Yeah, so it's difficult to turn that into a good-looking sales page with that WooCommerce block, because when you scroll down to that product listing, it looks like one of the listings you would get in a regular online shop that's built with WooCommerce, rather than a call to action you would want to have on a sales page.
Yeah. So again, the problem that we have here is the image in the background that has a copy on it. So you need to obviously get rid of that. And but here, at least the information is clearer to me now. I find it much easier to understand what it is about. And it is 5-star rated. Who by? I don't know that. So you need to tell me that. Learn piano without sheets, clearly laid out, step by step, by conservatory, graduated, professional musicians. That's really interesting. I'd be like, oh God, 8-week live bootcamp training course, but there's no link for me to go to it. So this is actually a bit easier to understand. Again, this central, the center text doesn't work because it goes like this and then it goes to the left. So don't mix your alignments. But this is actually now here. See how this doesn't work. Again, you see it in comparison with this. This is clear. This is not clear. So it's pretty much because, again, you didn't have a terribly different layout. You just had things on sort of, these are on a column rather than on 3 columns, but there isn't that much of a big difference. I think that you just need same observations as for the desktop version, that you need to really rethink the user journey and rethink the content and what is essential and what isn't, because you want to simplify it as much as possible and get people to somehow experiment, somehow see, because if you're clearly super, especially if you had 150k students, that's amazing. So clearly it's a great method and you want people to buy it. But if I were into a piano course, I probably wouldn't buy this because I want to try it out. I'm not going to give you 200 and whatever it was. I would want to learn more about it. And game, sounds great. I might do it. Just also, do I need a piano? Can I play it on the computer? Do you know what I mean? Can I do it with keyboards? What do I need? I don't actually know whether I need a piano, because if it's an online program, do you know what I mean? Do I learn on the computer? It's because you could have a simulator. So these are the essential things that I feel I need to know, and I need more of an experience because I've had to read a lot and I haven't experienced anything really. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, guys, we have to come into land there, but let me just recap some of the stuff that's been mentioned here. It's actually appropriate that we've deep dived especially into the mobile layout, and Peter has actually pointed out a couple of times now that things are more obvious when you are on a mobile layout. So with regards to mobile first, because you're forced to stack your information and make it clearer, sometimes things are a little bit more obvious in that format. And Google I believe it's September time, will certainly be penalizing sites that do not have that mobile first mentality, that have text size that's too small, padding, or things clashing or overlapping, etc. So we really do need to pay attention. I think specifically for this site, just before we wrap up then, that the core issue is not necessarily design, although text layouts and font sizes and all that
very different font sizes, and some of them are way too small. You need consistency.
But the core thing that we feel is missing, I think, across all of us here is certainly an understanding of what it is and why, and the social proof, etc., and also what we need. So it definitely feels like the copy on this could be significantly improved. Folks, if you want to get involved with this, then please hit us up in the comments below. There is also a link that the Cloudways team will put in the comments here for you so that you can submit your website. Do you want us to have a look at your website? And also, when you submit your website, let us know what issues you have. Are there particular questions that you would like us to answer so that we can give you the most value from our next review? We're going to jump into the comments in a few seconds to come and have a conversation with you and see what you've been saying. So thank you, everyone who has contributed. All that's left for us to do is, first of all, let you know how you can connect with each one of us. Jan?
Best place for me is to connect in my Facebook group, WP Mastery.
Awesome. Peter?
Design for Geeks.
That's
my Facebook group. Best place.
And awesome. Then me is Agency Trailblazer, and all three of us are always in the Cloudways user group as well.
Absolutely.
So be sure to hang out with us there, folks. We are now going to do our cheesy wave until Cloudways
turns us off.
Turns us off. Bye-bye, folks.